Hey everybody, Mike with you here on the Sonex 413 channel on YouTube. And it's a great day for building, not such a good day for flying. 25-mile-an-hour winds and gusts here in the viewing area. And I'm here to welcome you to part 2 of our build-along video, in which we're building a capacitor airplane, a sport flying free flight plane, electrically powered with a supercapacitor, just like this one. As I said, this is part 2. If you missed part 1, this video is not going to make a lot of sense. You might want to go back, check out part 1. And if you're new to supercapacitor free flights, check out the video Supercapacitor Free Flight Basics on my channel. And that give you a good overview of how these things work in general. Okay, but assuming you were along here on the last episode, you and I put together some patterns and cut out all our flying surfaces. There's our wings and tail surfaces that were cut out of styrofoam picnic plates, and we're nearly ready to sand those down. Also, if you remember, we laminated together some supermarket meat tray material to a certain size, and we put 2 layers together, and that's dry now. That's of course going to form the basis of our fuselage pod. Not much to it. There's not much to the whole airplane. But there are a couple of chores we got to take care of before we get to the sanding, and we'll do that real quick. We talked last time about selecting material for our tail boom. It's got to be 6 inches long, nice and straight, and we decided we liked this piece of 1/8" square hard balsa. That's a beaut. If you went to your junk box and you could find like a 1mm or a 50 thousandths carbon fiber rod like this one, that's great for bragging rights at the flying field. Carbon fiber tail boom. This one's .050 inch, 50 thousandths inch, solid. And of course a 1mm is 40 thousandths, just a little smaller than that. That would be perfect. So if you could come up with a 1mm carbon rod, it's already waterproof. But this, being balsa, we would like it to be waterproof. We do a lot of our flying early morning, late evening. The dew is settling in on the grass, and Richie has some stick and tissue models that you can use like a barometer to tell the weather. When the sun goes down, the tissue sags, and flying's all done. So we'd like to waterproof this, since we are using balsa. Probably if you use bamboo or something else, you might not have to do that. If it was carbon fiber, you definitely wouldn't have to. I've got a can of 30-year-old SIG light coat dope here, and I'm just going to grab a paper towel and just dab up a little bit of that goop. This is so old, it's like it's flowing like STP oil treatment in the old TV ads. It's like honey. But I keep adding thinner to it, and it never goes away. I'm just going to rub this into the wood grain here with the paper towel. I don't even want to waste time cleaning a brush doing this. Just a little dab on the paper towel will do the trick. And then I just toss it. Sometimes I miss the full balsa construction, but you know what? The foam is awesome. We're using recycled material and free material, and we're saving it from going to the landfill. So, and we're getting some use out of it. There it is. We'll let that dry up. Nice waterproof stick. That one, I got a real good piece there. That grain is dead on straight. You can eyeball right down it. It looks beautiful. So we will put that aside. Seal up our can of SIG. Maybe it'll last another 30 years. I bought that in Tucson, Arizona when I was in the Air Force. It was a hobby store up on Speedway Boulevard. Maybe some of you old timers remember. It was Tucson Train and Hobby. great, great hobby store. Okay, so that takes care of one piece of wood there. The other piece we have to do a little prep work for is, I don't know if you remember, we talked about how we make a balsa wood plate to put the switch on, mount it first to the balsa wood, and then mount the balsa wood into the foam structure, and that distributes the stress so that it doesn't tear out when you operate it. So we're gonna, you could use alternatives to this, but we're going all out. 1/32 sheet balsa out of the junk box, and we're just gonna cut it into 4 pieces. Our finished piece is only going to be less than a ½ inch square, so this is overkill. But there we go, 4 pieces, and then we're just going to use our Titebond water soluble, I think they call it aliphatic resin glue. Anyway, carpenter's glue. And then we're going to take each layer of balsa wood, as we lay it on the previous one, we're going to go at right angles. So this one goes cross grain to the first one. And this makes a super lightweight material. I've made sheets, small sheets of this balsa ply material, and substituted it for plywood and light ply in gas models, and select the rest of the wood to be pretty light. And I'll tell you what, you can build some unbelievably light structures without going to composite. Well, I suppose when you start laminating wood like this, you are making a composite material in a way. Okay, there it is, 4-layer stick of 1/32. We're going to get our piece out of the middle of that when it sets up. Put that aside. Alright, I think finally we're ready to get into sanding some foam pieces. There's our flying surfaces and our fuselage block. We're going to sand those up. We're going to use 220 grit and 600 grit, or something close to those two, basically the rougher one to remove a little material, and then the finer one to put a couple finish strokes on it and get a nice finish. And I was thinking there's not much sanding to do here, and that's not very typical of these models, because we're using the foam plate material, which is so thin we're not going to end up doing much sanding. So just to make it into a little side trip and a mini tutorial, while we're doing our sanding, I have cut out 2 more wing blanks using the pattern we made in the first episode. And of course that's much thicker material. You can see that's over 1/8 of an inch thick. But we're going to sand and airfoil into these and show you the alternate method of making wings for these small models, and at the same time show you the method of sanding wet to keep the dust down and make it a nice clean process like it never was before. So stand by, meet me at the kitchen sink. Alright, it's literally time to roll up your sleeves here, and we're going to get to some sanding, which used to be my least favorite job of the whole model building process, and now I find it to be, well, at least not so bad. We've got a kitchen type vegetable strainer basket here. We've lined it with a couple layers of ordinary paper towel. This is like magic. Watch this. We'll get that wet first of all so it'll stick down to the basket. Okay. And normally I would just let it slowly run, but I think it's going to interfere with our sound, so I'm just going to run it as I need it. Alright, then the other thing that's kind of handy to have is a waterproof cutting board. We'll be using that in a moment. Okay, we'll start with those wing panels we made. Those are the ones we made out of the styrofoam picnic plate. And there's not much to do here. There's no airfoil to sand into it because it's a flat plate, and we're going to build it with a little under camber to it. But still, we'd like to have the profiles match. So remember those marks we made to show which way was the front? We'll put them both at the same end, and we'll I'll stack them up nice and even at the root edge. Line them up right there, and I can see there's just a little bit of mismatch. It's not too bad. I'm going to use my little 220 grit stick that I made up. Now this is a handy tool. We're going to be using sheets on sandpaper on a block too, but this is a real handy tool. Make some of these up in different grits. Just glue a piece of sandpaper onto a popsicle stick, or you could get the wider ones too, and then after you've trimmed it from the back, take the back side of your X-Acto knife, just a square straight edge, and drag it at an angle like that over the corner, and it takes all the grits away from that edge. And so now if you have anything rubbing on that edge there, it doesn't get contacted by any grits. And what that's good for is, for instance, if you had to, for some reason, get in here and sand in this corner but without touching the fuselage, there's no grit on the side of this, nor is there any on that very corner. So I could go in there like that and sand it without touching the fuselage. By the way, I wouldn't be doing that on this plane because you don't want to sand areas that have already been colored with the magic marker, because it removes pieces of colored styrofoam, and they lodge themselves into the white material, and it looks pretty nasty. So what you want to do is get it all sanded before you ever go near it with a magic marker, when you're sure you're not going to be doing any more sanding. Okay, I've got these wing roots lined up. There's our two marks showing the front, and we're just going to try to make these match. Let's get everything wet. I'm hoping you'll be able to hear me over the running water. I'll speak up a little bit. Now I'm just going to hold that nice and straight. Every few strokes, I'm just going to rinse that off into the basket. There's absolutely nothing at all getting into the air. This used to be such a horrible job. I don't know if you've ever done it, but the little particles of sanded plastic, they take up a static charge. They start sticking to everything, and they float in the air, and you're breathing them. And, this way they get caught in that paper filter. They never are in the air. There we go, a few strokes, rinse it off, right in there. And you don't want to just flush this stuff down the drain either. That's actually a big problem, is what they call plastic microparticles that get into the ecosystem. Little critters eat them, and then bigger critters eat those things, and pretty soon you and I are eating plastic. So this way, all these particles get caught in the paper filter. After we're done sanding, we're going to let it drain, and then we're going to just gather up the corners, all that dust, while it's wet, and then just put it in the trash. The other thing is, when you rinse the wet or dry paper, every once in a while it takes all the little debris out from between the cutting grains, and it keeps it nice and fresh. It cuts great. The sandpaper actually lasts longer. By the way, we're actually trying to remove a little material here, so we're using a 220 grit. And leave all those particles in the water. There, they match perfectly. They look great. Now, we actually did such a good job that there are some like sharp edges on there. It probably doesn't make a difference, but let's break those edges with some sandpaper also. Let's see what we got here. 220. That's what I want. 600. Okay. Now we're just going to try to lightly give that a couple of strokes right on the sharp corner, just to remove it. We're talking a tiny little radius there. Get it wet so nothing, no dust flies. And then rinse. Doesn't even look like there's anything there, but if you were doing it dry, it would be all floating around in the air. And take that edge off. On that thin end there, I'm just making little strokes away from me over the corner. And don't get carried away, because you think you're not taking anything off, but you are. Keep a close watch on what you're doing. It doesn't take much. Like I say, probably this is maybe even going beyond what's necessary. But I'll tell you what, that feels nice now. Maybe those air molecules can tell. I don't know. Here's the other one. Well, I can see that ballpoint pen mark going away, so it's taking material off. This picnic plate material is a little too thin to use on bigger models for wings. This is about the limit of the size you can use it for making wings. But I'll use it for tail surfaces for models that are a little bit bigger than this, up to about walnut scale size, what they call walnut scale, 18, 19 inch wingspan. Okay, those feel great. Ready to send that back to the assembly department. Let's take a moment, get our tail surfaces cleaned up. And we're not going to do too much here. This is just to straighten out my unsteady hand when I was cutting it with the X-Acto knife. Just take off the high spots. Smooth out that radius there a little bit. Tell you what, I like the lines of this airplane so far. The sweep of this tail group, it's kind of pretty. I like it. Okay, that's the stabilizer. Now we'll hit the rudder with the 220 grit. Always the rinse keeps that dust down. I haven't seen a single speck of dust in the air. There's our 600 grit, and again, we're just going to break those edges. It's the little things that you do that you probably don't have to, and you don't really notice, but the overall effect, the whole finished project's got a nice professional look to it when you take care of all the little details and do everything right. Makes a difference. Alright, there's our rudder. Did we do that one yet? No, I don't think we did. If we did, we didn't get all that ballpoint pen line. I'd like to get that off, I guess. Okay. Rinse. So, there's our tail surfaces sanded. The other foam piece we had for the airplane was our fuselage block. And the only thing we want to do there is square off one edge nice, because we're going to do some measuring off that top surface. So what we'll do here is get on our cutting board, get that piece of 220, and then I'm going to be very careful to hold this piece perpendicular to the board, and then without pushing down too hard, just give it a few little strokes, holding it perpendicular to the board. Now that actually took off some material, believe it or not. Again, we rinse the paper, rinse the workpiece, catching all the little dust in the filter. And that, yeah, that worked beautiful. You can't see it on the camera, but that's absolutely flat and straight now. Very nice. So we're done with that. Now, that's actually all the parts that we need to do at the present time for the build airplane. But I want to do just a little mini tutorial here for a couple minutes on sanding foam wings, airfoil type foam wings. And this is where you cut your wing material out of a foam meat tray, or it could be the sheet d'apron from the hobby store. You would treat it the same way as what we're going to do here. So, well, in case you missed it earlier, I used the wing templates we made for our model, and I traced out 2 more wing blanks out of the supermarket meat tray styrofoam, which is it's over 1/8. So I'm aligning the wing roots there, and just like with the first set of wings, we're going to want to sand the outline so that they match. And you can see I've marked these, so we're going to consider that the front of the wing. Alright, I've got my little wooden block. Get the water going. And again, not a lot of pressure, but just being careful that you hold it nice and vertically, or it's perpendicular to that part. If you feel little balls of styrofoam rolling underneath the paper, rinse it off. Every few strokes. You can see the material building up on the paper. That would have all been in the air, floating around. This way we rinse it, it goes right in the basket. Get it wet. Too bad you couldn't use this method for your 6-foot sailplane wing panels. Okay, we've got those wing panel outlines looking real good. Let's sand the airfoil into them. We use our cutting board, set it up like so. Now, there's our leading edge, is where the blue dot is. So, we'll work on that first. We'll put it right near the edge of the board. Get our wooden block with the 220 grit. Nice and wet. Now, I'm just going to not hold it flat. I'm going to hold a little angle in it, like I'm trying to put about, I don't know what it would be, 10 or 15 degrees probably. I'm going to try to sand down into the material so that it will be tapered from about the last third of it or so. And at the trailing edge, we're going to want it to be about a 1/16 of an inch. I'm going to run this a little slower. There we go. That's perfect. see the material coming off. And I don't know if in the reflection you can see the water is sticking where I've removed the shiny top skin. So I'm starting to taper an area about the last inch or so of that wing cord. Alright, here we go. Now, Richie and I used to do this without the running water, and I'll tell you what, it's terrible. This styrofoam it's in the top 10 list of things you don't want to sand. It's not quite up there with fiberglass, but using this method, it's no problem at all. I do this all the time. You can see we're really starting to feather that edge. I don't know if you can tell on the root here. You can see it starting to taper, and you can see we're removing material up to about here. Oh, and I'm probably holding this off camera so you can't see it. Alright, let me try that again. Maybe you can see. Alright, I'm giving you the reflection here. You see the part that I'm hitting with the sanding block. We'll do a little more here. Sorry about that. I don't have a monitor, so I can't see what I'm showing you on the camera unless I take a look. Richie has made a lot of wings using this method, and we saw one fly away on a thermal the other day. First time in my life I've seen a free flight model go out of sight straight up in a thermal. Alright, you can see we're collecting a sludge, white sludge there of styrofoam powder. We'll just make sure we get it all rinsed into that bucket. Same thing with all that material. Look at it all. Oh, the horror that ended up in the air. Well, you get the idea. Let me see if I should give you the shot again. See how much I've sanded there? And see the taper on that root? That is, that's the trailing edge done. Now, I would do the same thing on the leading edge, but not come up as far. I would only come up about 3/4 of an inch instead of 1.5 inches. And then, as a final step, I would take the 600 grit paper, wet, and just make a few strokes over that surface in one direction. In one direction, like brushing a horse. And I'll tell you what that does. That puts a nice finish on that foam. Makes it look nice and smooth. One thing you will notice when you go to color your model with the Sharpie markers, there's a little difference in how the surface accepts the color, whether it's been sanded yet or whether it's still the smooth, shiny coat. Don't worry yourself. Don't worry yourself too much about that, because from a couple steps away you don't really notice it, and it still looks pretty good. Alright, we got everything rinsed off there. I'm not going to show you the whole process, but I just wanted you to see that's how you make a wing out of the thicker material, and you can carve an airfoil into it. It's a little more time consuming, and basically that's why we chose to use our picnic plate material for the wings for today's project airplane. Okay, so we're done with the sink. I'm going to let this stuff drain. You can't see it on camera, but I can see all the particles floating in there. It'll drain through the paper towel, and then later on pick up the corners right in the trash. I did this whole job without wearing a dust mask or anything. There's no dust anywhere around. That's the hot setup, believe me guys, for when you're doing your foam sanding. Okay, back to the dry workbench. I'm going to take a break, have a cup of coffee before I meet you there, and we're going to start making incisions to lay the groundwork for, we're going to install the tail boom into that fuselage block. So stick around. Grab yourself a cup of coffee and a snack. See you back here in a moment. Alright guys, I've got a piece of cereal box cardboard taped down here. We're going to make a little pattern for our wing root piece. I guess you call it a root rib. If we look down here, we can see that there's like a little crescent shaped piece right at the base of the wing, and it's got a radius on the top. Okay, now that's about a 20-inch radius, and that's what we're going to draw on the piece of cardboard there. I've got this pinned down with some dressmaker's pin. We're working on a board here that it's got a layer of cardboard, and then under that is a layer of Celotex sealing tile, so we can push pins into this board, no problem. Okay, so I've got this piece of cardboard pinned down so it's not going to move. I've got a piece of string here. I'm going to hold the end of the pin right in the end of the string, and I've got it measured out. It's 20 inches long, so if I hold a nice even tension on this and just swing an arc, I will have a 20-inch radius curve. And I've got to hold this pen vertically the whole time I'm doing it here. Here we go. It's a nice looking curve, but I started too high. I need this to be about 3.5 inches long when we're done. So let's try it a little lower. And here I go again. Oh yeah, and you know it was accurate because it followed the same line going back. So that looks almost straight. It's got a little arc to it. That's our 20-inch radius. That's going to be our undercamber on our airfoil. So now what we're going to do to make our template, the wing root is 3.5 inches. Is that right? 3.5. Okay, and we want this piece to extend out 1/4 inch at each end, so that would make it let's see, 3.5, no, 1/8 of an inch at each end. Let's call it 3 3/4. So I'll make one point here anywhere on the line. Hope we're in camera range there. And then having our straight edge start at that line, we're going to come up till we see it intersect with I'll tell you what, let's go right to the 4 there. That'll be nice. It'll make it easier. So I'm at the first point randomly chosen. I'm coming up on the arc in a straight line to where it's 4 inches. And you can see it's not a whole lot of a curve. Now what we're going to do is measure down 1/4 inch at both ends of that. Try to be reasonably accurate, but do the best you can. Okay, there's a couple marks 1/4 inch below that first line that we drew. Let's connect that up. That looks marvelous. Okay, now where we made that original point, let's draw a straight line coming down there. And the other one was 4 inches, right? So we'll put a line there. Okay, that is our template. So let's unpin it here. we're going to produce this part to this shape out of 2 layers of that meat tray board. Let's go ahead and cut this out real quick. Okay, extra points if you put this guy's name in the comments. I know who he is. Do you? Okay, we'll find out who's got kids out there. There, and now we're going to cut this lovely curve. That's going to be our under camber curve for the airfoil. And it's not a whole lot, but you know what? I've noticed these airplanes that have the little bit of under camber, they seem to do better. So I've started incorporating it on all my little ships. The little Dakota's got some, hard to see, but it's got some. The little Ranger's got some, and my big 40 farad ship has got a ton of under camber. That's that big monster that goes floating around the field. Alright, I'm going to trace this out on the high quality grocery store foam board. I'm going to make 2 of these and laminate them together, and I'll join you back here after that. Alright, I took a break there and made myself a cup of coffee. But I'm back, and I think I remember where we left off, and that was we had done a layout and swung a great big radius and made this little template, which if we check it out, it's a 1/4 of an inch at each end, and it's about 3/32 of an inch bigger in the center. That's not an awful lot, but that's about what it is, 3/32 of an inch rise in the middle. So I took one of the old faithful supermarket styrofoam trays, 1/8 of an inch thick or a little better, and I laid out and cut out 2 pieces of that. And you can see the thickness, about a little over 1/8. And we're going to laminate these 2, and they're going to form the center rib of the wing. Both of the wing roots are going to come down and be glued onto that. And you can see it sticks out a little bit on the front and then back, and I'll show you why. Alright, but we're going to prepare these. Now when we go to put the wings themselves on there, they're going to be up at a little bit of an angle, what we call a dihedral angle, and you can see that in the prototype ship. See how the wings go upward somewhat? That's called dihedral, and it gives the airplane stability. And so we're going to want to put that in there at an angle. So let's prepare these with a slight angle to them. First of all, let's mark a little dot on each one. Flat part on the bottom, curve on top, and put a little dot there. Show us that's the inside. And then again, flat surface down, lay it out, little dot. So when we put those together, they're going to go dot to dot. Easy, huh? Alright, now since they're going to go together dot to dot, and we want it to be like a little V going down the middle, so we want this one here to slope down a little like this all the way, and then this one here we want to slope this way a little bit. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Alright, this one we're going down like that, or which means up like that. I'm not going to do a lot of sanding with this, so I'm not going to bother with the sink and the water works. Just going to put a little 5-degree edge in that. Hopefully not touch this edge up here, leave that alone. see that. I'm looking down at it from the end, and I can see that little bit of an angle. That looks just right. Okay, and then the other one, dot to dot, and we want it to go up this way. That's my little 220 grit sanding stick that I made out of a popsicle stick. Alright, we're just about there. Okay. Then, when we put them together, makes a nice little V in between them there. It'll give us a good gluing surface. So we're going to take our tight bond carpenter's glue once again, and the two dots are going face to face, so we'll put some glue on that surface. That's the gluing surface. And why isn't it coming out? Well, it helps if you open it. That is just a normal clog. Alright. So far so good. I think if we all follow along, we'll all end up with hopefully airplanes that are all close to each other in the final result, which is pretty good because we're technically working without blueprints. Alright, I lined them up on the bottom, stood them up side by side. I'm just going to put them aside, let them dry a little bit. Alright, and there's that template. Again, goes in the little envelope with the rest of the templates for this airplane. And the second one and third one you make will go together super quick if you decide to build them. Alright, do you all remember the laminated fuselage blank? We've got a nice true edge up on top that we sanded. Time to take out the old measuring stuff, and we're going to mark a couple points. Now, this one here, let me grab a pen real quick. Alright, now in calculating this, what we're going to do is cut a little slot in this so that we can glue in the tail boom at a little angle, and that's going to give us our angle of incidence, which is the little angle between the line of the stabilizer and the line of the wing, which is the wing is canted up a little bit to give it a little positive, what they call angle of attack. But you don't have to know that to make it work. All you have to do is we're going to take from this nice straight edge that we've got there, and at this end we're going to measure down a point 5 millimeters. And well, first thing we're going to do, even before that, we're going to measure a spot 1 inch in from that. So I'll line up the edge with the 2-inch mark there, and this is not a critical dimension, but we're going to go in approximately, let's see, where's that 1-inch mark? Right there. Alright, so that's an inch in. Alright, now the dimensions that we have to be a little more careful with. And sorry people, but the easiest way I could think to do this is to do it with metric numbers, because it's the dimensions are so small and there's not much difference between them, and it's just much easier to do it metric. If you absolutely have to, you can get out the calculator and convert from metric millimeters times 0.03937. Give you the inches. Alright, from that edge we're going down, what was it, 5 millimeters. And a mark. There's 5. Alright, then we're going down to the other corner of the piece, and we're going to add 4 millimeters to that 5, which comes out to 9. So we're going down 9 millimeters. Right. Let's see, double check that. Okay. This one's 9. This one is 5. Okay. And we've got to mark 1 inch in. Let's get ready with our good sharp X-Acto and our straight edge. We're going to put the straight edge across those 2 points. And that would be right about like that. And you can see that little bit of an angle that's going on there. That's what we're trying to lock in. So where our 1 inch mark is there, approximately there, we're going to hold the knife perfectly vertically, and starting at the 1 inch line, we're going to follow our straight edge back, and we're going to break out of the material right where we made that mark at 5 millimeters. And we're going to not try to get through it in one cut, but make multiple cuts till we get through to the other side. I think this knife is ready for a sharpening, to be honest with you. Right after this shot I'll do that. Okay, but we made it down through. We're down to the building board, and we've got that angle locked in. See? That looks pretty good. Now what we want to do is, depending on how tall or thick your tail boom is, we're going to make another slot adjacent to that one so that we can slip this into the slot. I guess what I'll do here is actually use the piece as a guide. Set it up right there, and again from about where that 1 inch mark is, just gonna, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna sharpen this and come back. Let me shut the camera off and put an edge on this blade. I'll be right back. Okay, where were we? I've got the knife sharpened now. We're going to take our tail boom, line it up with the one incision we already made, and we're going to make one more here parallel to it so that we can install that tail boom. There it is marked. I'll just finish it off by hand here. Excellent. Then we're going to go in there with the old number 11 and take that piece out. Alright, everybody see that? Give it a trial fit. That'll work. Alright. Let me see here. I think we're just about out of time. We're going to, I'm going to shut the camera off, download the chip, we'll come back and glue this together. Alright, things going to start looking more like an airplane very quickly. Stand by. Up here now. We broke off where I had cut that slot and was getting ready to glue the tail boom in. I wasn't super happy with the way it fit in there. It was a little loose. So as I say, there's never a mistake. I meant to do it that way. So I glued a little shim of 1/32 balsa there, and then I block sanded it down. I only left a tiny little shaving of it, just enough so now it fits in there perfectly. Okay. So what we're going to do is apply a little bit of glue. You could use 5-minute epoxy on this, but I'm just going to use the tight bond and give it some time to dry. Now you'll notice when we go to put it in there, the stick is much narrower than the fuselage block, so we're just going to stick it right in along the center line, and then we're going to eyeball down it to make sure it's nice and straight. We're going to tweak it a little if we have to, and then we're going to let it dry. Alright, I'll show you what we're going to do there, but it's going to end up looking like that. Okay, so let's take it apart. We know how it's going to go. I always like to what they call dry fit the parts once before you put glue on it. Put it together once first, make sure it works. Alright, and then let's see, little piece of the scrap foam will be good to spread that glue there in that channel. As I pointed out, that tail boom is narrower than the fuselage is, and that's okay. We're going to work around that, incorporate it into the design. Now, okay, we've got glue in the slot there. Let's put just a little also on the other mating piece. And the reason I like to use the tight bond is it's water based, so as it dries, some of the water evaporates, and of course that makes it lighter. So as the old saying goes, add more lightness. Alright, I'm slipping that in there. Everything's been primed with the glue. I'm going to sight down the tail boom to make it look like it's right on that center line seam. I can use that to help me line it up. I'm going to eyeball down that seam. Oh, that looks nice. Let me show you what that looks like. Nice and straight. Okay. So, I'm not going to disturb that, but I am going to put it aside, and I'll be right back, and we're going to work on getting those wings put together. This thing is going to start looking like an airplane. Okay, that's drying in a safe place. Now, if you remember the laminated piece we made, and let me eyeball the back of the camera here and show you this one too. If you look at down the top center of that piece, you can see it's got like a little bit of V groove to match the wing dihedral angle, or it's close enough. It's better than leaving it flat. It doesn't have to be perfectly accurate. Let's take now and draw a series of lines that's going to help us join the wings and set the dihedral angle. It's easier than it sounds. We're going to go right down the middle of this page. We're just going to eyeball it. Where's my pen? There it is. We're just going to eyeball a line the long way down this page. No, that didn't work. The pen didn't roll all the way. Hold on. Let's try that again. Yeah, you're going to have to come in from the angle like that, I guess. Alright, then. Where's our triangle? Oh yeah, the Out of Order CD. You guys may not believe it. We did a song called Inspection Sticker Blues, and we submitted it to NPR. And I don't know if you've ever heard the radio show Car Talk, Click and Clack, the two brothers. And every time they would go away to break, they would play a funny song that had to do with cars. And of course our song was about having the inspection sticker blues. It was a song we wrote about my old jalopy, my winter beater. Lo and behold, they pitched it, and I was sitting home one Saturday morning having my coffee, and there was our song on the radio, the Inspection Sticker Blues. So I guess that's a close brush with fame. Okay, we've got two intersecting lines there, perpendicular, means they're at a right angle. Now we're going to do just a little bit of measuring here. The long way is going to be our wingspan. So we're going to go out 5 inches on each side of the center line and put a little mark, 5 inches. 5 inches. 5 more inches. Alright, there's that. Now, I hope you didn't forget this piece. Remember that one? It's the same front and back. Doesn't matter which way we put it. But we're going to go, let's see, we might as well find the halfway point of it and do it accurately, huh? 4 inches long. Makes the 2-inch point the center. We'll just, doesn't have to be exact, but now we'll take that, put it on this line, and we'll center the seam on this line. You'll see what I mean here in a second. Oh, that's looking marvelous. Now, I'm going to hold it there. I know you can't see it. Don't worry. Straight pin. And I'm going to put it right in like that. This one you'll be able to see me do it. Make sure it's right on that center line and right near the end. Put that in. And it doesn't hurt to have a couple extras. The reason I'm putting them in from the top is the wing is actually a little narrower than that. I allowed a little extra space here so we could put some pins down through into the board. And like I said, that board is a Celotex ceiling tile. You can push pins into it and it's nice and flat. Makes a great building board for building rubber jobs and whatnot. Okay, I took some scrap material and I measured out, made some little blocks, 1 1/4 inches, that's 31.8 millimeters, and I drew arrow, which dimension is 1 1/4, so I wouldn't mix it up and put it in the wrong way. Okay, those are going to be our wing dihedral braces. So put them in the 1 1/4 inch way, pointing up, right here, just inside and touching that 5-inch mark that we made there, and then from the back, go ahead and put in you can't see it, but we're right inside the 5-inch mark there, and I'm nailing it down to the board with a couple of straight pins here. Now, Richie doesn't like to do setups like this. He'll sit watching a NASCAR race or something, and he'll put a wing dihedral together with 5-minute epoxy in his lap, doing it in his, while it sets up or something. You can do that if you like. Alright, we're going to do the same thing. I don't know if you can see it over on this side, but again, right at the 5 inches. I wonder if you can. Yeah, you almost see it. But again, right at the 5-inch mark, that's where the wingtips are going to end up, and we want them to be this high. So we're just standing them straight up, and that gives us a block 1 1/4 inches off the board, and we're 5 inches away from this center rib, which is itself a 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch off the deck. And these being 1 1/4 inches, that means that our actual dihedral is approximately 1 inch each tip. So that is looking nice, like it's waiting to receive some parts. Let me search out, locate our there they are, our two wings. which we've already sanded, if you recall. Nice smooth edges on them, and they had those marks from when we originally made them to indicate that was the top of the wing and facing front. So what we're going to do here is place it like that, right with the root end right up to that center line, and hold it down and just see how it fits. Looks like that's going to work fine where we don't have to do much of anything. And the tip ends up just like that. That's okay. Alright, so, and I think this one will do the same. Oop, bumped the camera, sorry. Let's see if we're still pointing at the work table. Close enough. Alright. Oh boy, running out of time. I gotta shut the camera off and restart it. Back with you in a flash. Hold on. Alright everybody, one more go at it. This is the final assault on the summit. I think we're going to make it. Alright, we had glued our tail boom into the body blank, and we eyeballed it, and it is nice and straight. So we're all set with that for now. What we'd like to do is get these wings joined up, and we'll call that a breaking point. Before we actually put glue to it, I want to show you how to inspect a pair of wings to see that they're both true with each other and not misaligned. I've taken the prop off this airplane to make it a little easier, and you can first of all get a look at the paint job, how we've got the blue stripes and the white material, and we've got to make sure that the airplane is pointed dead straight at us, and then rotate it slowly. Bring the nose up, still pointing right at us. Now look at the wing. It is pointed, the wing is pointed right at us. It's like a perfect line, and as I keep bringing the nose up, I can start seeing the bottom of the wing, and I'm seeing an exactly equal amount of it on both sides. See the white color on the bottom of the wing? As I put the nose down, that white color disappears all at exactly the same time. If it was twisted, it wouldn't eclipse itself so evenly like that. One side would go away first. This one is perfectly aligned, or close enough. If you make your model that straight, it'll really help it fly right. It's hard to overcome a warped surface. The reason I show you that is we're going to glue this together, and you won't be able to move the board in relation to your eye, but you'll be able to move your head up and down and inspect that wing and look. Okay, my camera shut off and I had to restart it there, so I was right in the middle of gluing this too. That's okay, no big deal. Alright, we've got our glue here. We're going to just make sure that's still nice and moist and ready to take the wings. Alright, we've got a good light coat of it there. So now our wings, we're just going to take our sandpaper and just give it one wipe down the bottom where it's going to touch the glue. So it's just no more than that. Same thing on this side where it's going to touch the glue. Alright. And right where we just did that, we're going to put a little tiny light coat. And then a little bit right on that root edge. You don't have to use a ton of it. I'll just spread it there. Oh, that's nice. Okay. our dot is on top going that way. We're going to center this and bring it up to that line on the rib, and the tip will be resting on the block. So that looks good. We're going to take a couple of straight pins out of the collection here. Alright, we're lining up the wing with that center seam on the root rib, and we're just going to put one pin through there, and then we're going to hold it down at the leading edge and pin it right to that root rib. Then we're going to bring it down to touch at the trailing edge, pin it in, and then lightly holding it in there puts them in. They don't have to go in all the way, but that looks good. Then we'll do the same thing here, right where we had rubbed the sandpaper on it a moment ago. Put a little thin layer of glue on the wing root right there. And the reason I like to use Type-On, another reason, is it gives you just a little time to mess with it, unlike the CA glues. Alright, there's our dot. It's going to match up with that dot. It's going to go right in there like so. Line up the leading edge and the trailing edge. And when you've got the leading and trailing edges lined up, we'll go ahead and pin it once in the middle. Alright. Then we'll pin that down at the trailing edge. Okay. And then at the leading edge. That stuff's got a little spring to it. I'm going to have to put a couple of pins here to hold it in. Our old picnic plates have got a little fight to them. We want to stand back up. We can fix that. Actually approaching our break-off point. I see a little glue has squeezed out in the middle there, so I'm going to take out these two middle pins right where that glue is, and just do a little wipe there, clean it up, and then I'll put the pins back in. There. Now they're just touching our blocks there. You won't be able to see this on camera, but I'm gonna get down to the level of the wing and eyeball it the way we did when we were looking at the model there a minute ago, and I'm gonna see if those wings look as if they're straight or if they're doing some of this. If one is twisted up and one is twisted down, now is the time to adjust it while we can. And again, with this type of glue, we've got a minute or two to play with. So I'm eyeballing it from down here, and oh, that looks good. I don't have to touch a thing. That is it. So I'm going to leave that alone. It looks excellent. We'll close up that glue for the night. We've got our fuselage made with a tail boom stick. Our wings are put together. Our tail surfaces are ready to put on there. So I think in the next session we truly will have something looking like an airplane. We'll put the motor in it and the capacitor. We might actually finish it in the next session. I think we actually will. One more good work session like what we've put into it here, and we'll be ready to go do some test flying. All right, everybody. Hey, if you got this far, I give you credit. You stuck with it. You don't get an award for it, but we appreciate it. Hit that thumbs up button down there underneath the video window. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subbed, and we always love to hear your comments. Richie and I, we get a real kick out of reading your comments. It's like we've got friends all over the world. All right, Mike with you here, signing off on the Sonex 413 channel. We'll see you in episode 3 of this epic continuing mini-series saga as we build a capacitor sport flight, free flight airplane. See you next time, gang. Thanks a lot. See ya.